without baptism, we cannot receive the succeeding sacraments or the other sacraments. And the third one is the icon of Santo Niño, which is the unique expression of our faith. And that speaks of our popular devotions, our popular piety. So we can say that these three events, these three marks speaks of who we are as a Christian nation. Lover of the Eucharist, the sacrament of baptism, the effects of the sacrament of baptism, and our unique expression of our faith through popular devotion. But as I said, these 500 years of Christianity that we are celebrating this year is all about the gift of faith. This is not just about colonialism. This is not about an issue of politics and economy and how we were colonized by the Spaniards. It's all about faith. That's why in the recent pastoral letter of the bishops, they said, and I quote, they did it in the plain spirit of panunuluyan, pagpapakatao, and pakikipagkapwa-tao, which are the genuine vessels of evangelization. Ang pananampalataya na ating ipinagdiriwang ngayon sa ika-500 Kristyanismo sa ating bansa ay hindi pilit at hindi pinilit. That was highlighted by the Filipino bishops in this recent pastoral letter. Niyakap, tinanggap ng ating mga ninuno, ng ating mga sinauna na mga katutubo ang pananampalatayang biyaya na ito galing sa Diyos. That's the first context, the gift of faith, the 500 years of Christianity in our country. The second context that I would like to develop is the pandemic. Sabi nga kanina pangalawang taon, tatawid tayo sa ikatlong taon. We do not know kung kailan ito matatapos, given the different variants and also the new cases that we are having right now, and also the experimental guidelines that the IATF imposed, particularly here in Metro Manila. But I think we need to discover opportunities given the pandemic. Last year, given the pandemic, the early months of the pandemic, there are different literatures that explains that we are living in a VUCA world. VUCA, V-U-C-A. Pag sinabi daw VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world brought by the pandemic. And to contextualize that in catechesis and in education, there are new learning modalities, right? There are new systems that we are practicing right now, given the different platforms, whether private or public schools. We become creative, even in the parish level. Kanina yung sineshare ni Rog, about their experience in the parish, that's being creative. Maganda yung senior niya na sayang naman yung internet connection ng parokya. Gamitin natin yan, in bringing the sacrament to the parishioners and particularly to the elders. In the new directory for catechesis, at alam ko po you're aware of this already, in number 360, and I quote, the internet and social networks create an extraordinary opportunity for dialogue, encounter, and exchange between persons, as well as access to information and knowledge. That is self-explanatory, given the words from the new directory for catechesis. And if I may add, in number 213 of the same document, The language of catechesis inevitably intersects with all the dimensions of communication, evident on a technological level, are producing changes on cultural level. No? Pwede nga nating sabihin given the pandemic, opportunity that we need to embrace is the technology, the use of different social platforms. There are literatures will also say that given the pandemic, we as catechists and religious educators or parish practitioners, our new environment now is the technology. And we need to accept that. If we define new evangelization as new fervor, new expression, and new ardor, I think we need to add that new evangelization, given the pandemic, is creating new culture. And what is that new culture? Digital world. We are living already in the digital world. And so we thank again the Lord God for the gift of technology. Alam po ninyo, mayroong isang pag-aaral, it was in 2019, no? Nagsasabi na ang mga tao daw, kapag nakakaranas ng salot, ng disaster sa buhay, or sakit, or kahirapan, or anumang uri ng paghihirap, mas lalo daw nagiging relihiyoso. Especially during the time of the pandemic. And I think that is an opportunity, no? An opportunity that we become more closer with God. Na tayo mas lalong nagiging mapalapit sa Diyos. At sana yun ang biyaya ng pandemic, no, sa atin. I remember last year, a government official answered this question. Ano? Ang tanong kasi last year, parusa ba ng Diyos ang pandemya? At sinagot niya, no, sabi nitong government official na ito, let's blame God for it. Sisihin natin ng Diyos. Babasa niyo naman kung ano yung sagot niya dyan. Diba? But let me answer this question, this answer of this government official using the homily of the then Father Cantalamessa, now Cardinal Cantalamessa, who is the official papal household of Pope Francis. And I quote, he said, while he was painting frescoes in St. Paul's Cathedral in London, the artist James Thornhill became so excited at a certain point about his fresco that he stepped back to see it better and was unaware he was about to fall over the edge of the scaffolding. A horrified assistant understood that crying out to him would have only hastened the disaster. Without thinking twice, he dipped a brush in paint and hurled it at the middle of the fresco. The master, appalled, sprang forward. His work was damaged, but he was saved. God does this sometimes with us. He disrupts our projects and our calm to save us from the abyss we don't see. But we need to be careful not to be deceived. God is not the one who hurled the brush at the sparkling fresco of our technological society. God is our ally, not the ally of the virus. He himself says in the Bible, I have plans for your welfare and not for woe. If these scourges were punishments of God, it would not be explained why they strike equally good and bad, and why the poor usually bring the worst consequences of them. Are they more sinners than others? No. The one who cried one day for Lazarus' death cries today for the scourge that has fallen on humanity. Yes, God suffers, like every father and like every mother. When we will find out this one day, we will be ashamed of all the accusations we made against him in life. God participates in our pain to overcome it. Being supremely good, wrote St. Augustine, God will not allow any evil in his works, unless in his omnipotence and goodness, he is able to bring forth good out of evil. End of quote. What a beautiful words from Cardinal Cantalamessa that answers that question. Parusa ba ng Diyos ang pandemya? Hindi eh. God is our ally. Kakampi nga natin ng Diyos dito at bahagi at kasama natin ng Diyos sa nararanasan nating hirap. But we really need to cooperate. No? Alam nyo, kaya naman ng Diyos, di ba? Alam natin yon. Given na siya'y makapangyarihan, no? Alam niya ang lahat na mawala ang pandemya. But we need to realize something. What is God's message, no, in this pandemic that we are experiencing? Let me now move to the third context. The third context is the new directory for catechesis as a providential grace. We're done with the first context, which is the 500 years of Christianity in our country. The pandemic giving us a new opportunity. And the third one is the new directory for catechesis as a grace for all of us. And this is actually side by side with the apostolic letter motu proprio of Pope Francis, Antiquum Ministerium. Alam po ninyo, kahapon, there was a gathering of the promotion of new evangelization, the Council for the Promotion of the New Evangelization in Rome, no, in which Archbishop Rino Fisichella headed. No? And I would like to quote the message of Pope Francis. He said, addressing to all catechists, to all of us, no? We must insist on indicating the heart of catechesis. The reason Jesus Christ loves you and never abandons you, we can never tire or feel. We are being repetitive about this first proclamation in the various stages of the catechetical process. End of quote. What is this Pope Francis tells us, catechists, given the new directory and the apostolic letter Antiquum Ministerium, no, institutionalizing catechetical ministry, that catechesis is not merely historical artifact, but a living tradition, that opens new creative paths for evangelization. That's the point, no, of Pope Francis. Later, we will develop that as we go along. I'm just giving and laying the foundation of our reflection as context. We know the historical background of this directory for catechesis. We know that the first publication of the directory happened and published in 1971, 6 years after the closing of the Second Vatican Council. And the second publication happened in 1997, which actually a response to Catechesi Tradende of St. John Paul II in 1979 and the Catechism of the Catholic Church in 1992. But take note that the first and second publication was published by the Sacred Congregation for the Clergy. No, makita natin yon. We need to see the big difference between the first two publications and this new directory for catechesis. This new directory for catechesis was published and manned by the Council for the Promotion of the New Evangelization. And that speaks a lot, no, to all of us, catechists and religious educators. No? Looking at the directory, the new directory, no, you will notice that there are 3 main parts with 4 chapters each. No? First, the first part is more of the relationship between catechesis and evangelization. You know, if you will see numbers 31 and 50 and 55, no, that's how the new directory defines the relationship between catechesis and evangelization. Just to quick quote these numbers. In number 31, it says that catechesis is the ecclesial, evangelization rather, is the ecclesial process of the church. While number 55 tells us that catechesis is the ecclesial act. So you will now see how the new directory defines catechesis and evangelization. If evangelization is the process, catechesis is the act. Para bang kung magbabiyahe ka, kung saan mo gustong pumunta, depende kung saan, kung malayo, hahanap ka ng paraan, paano ka makakarating? Pwedeng eroplano, pwedeng sasakyan na by land, pwedeng barko, pwedeng whatever. And that's how this part 1 of the new directory for catechesis defines this relationship of catechesis and evangelization. If in 1997, catechesis was defined as a stage in the process of evangelization. But here in the 2020, in the new directory for catechesis, evangelization is not just, catechesis is not just a stage, but catechesis is an integral part of evangelization, or evangelization is an integral part of catechesis, right? And so we say that catechesis and evangelization are inseparable, distinct, yet connected. Let me now move to the second part of the new directory as context. In the second part, we see here the process of catechesis. And just to help you, if you will just focus on numbers 214 to 217, which is part of chapter 8. The process of catechesis now of the new directory speaks of the digital languages and tools. See? So that connects us to the opportunity that this pandemic is giving us. That we need to maximize technology. That even in the catechesis, in catechetical aspect, in the life of the church, we really need to use these digital languages and tools. If I may quote number 216, which is part 2 of the process of catechesis, they said that catechists today must be aware of the extent to which the virtual world can leave profound marks, especially in younger or more fragile persons, and how much influence it on the marginalized of emotions of in the process of construction of one's identity. End of quote. So what is part 2 telling us of this new directory for catechesis as context? We really need to embrace, we really need to accept virtual reality. We really need to maximize technology. I would like to go back to the sharing of Rog a while back. Sabi nga niya, pagka naka-online mass ba, which is considered a virtual reality, how do we now define Eucharist as a real presence? Diba? And some liturgies will tell us that we can participate online mass, but we're not fulfilling the obligation really of celebrating the mass because of the lack of receiving Jesus in his real presence. So how do we now define that? I don't have any answer kasi hanggang ngayon issue yan. But that's a reality that we need to embrace right now. That we are living in a virtual world, maximizing technology, given the pandemic. In the new directory, part 3, no, speaks now of catechesis in the particular church, and we are referring to the diocese. And I invite you to focus, if you have a copy of the new directory, focus on numbers 336 to 338. And that speaks of the power of popular piety and devotions. And I think we as Filipinos, no, we need really to appreciate this. Kung merong akong pwedeng iambag sa pagdiriwang ng ika-500 Kristyanismo, no, ng pananampalataya sa ating bansa, ang maaari nating iambag sa buong mundo ay ang mga popular na pagpapahayag ng kabanalan. And I'm referring to the popular piety and devotions, mga panata. No? I remember the article of Father Albert Alejo, a Jesuit priest, no? Si Paring Bert. He has this beautiful article on the cultural energy that popular piety and devotion give. At he outlined 4 cultural energy. And what are these 4? He said in that article, spirituality of the body, spirituality of the many, spirituality of the family, and spirituality of dialogue. These are the 4 cultural energy that popular piety and devotion give, especially in the context of a diocese. No? Kaya kayo po, mga katekista at mga religion teachers in your own diocese, definitely you have a unique expression of faith. Nourish that, cherish that, and love that expression of faith, that popular devotion and piety, because it gives a lot of message about faith, especially to the ordinary people, especially values and virtues. I'm done with the context. 3 contexts that I share with you. First, the 500 years of Christianity in our country. Second, the pandemic giving us a new opportunities. And the third one is the new directory for catechesis as a providential grace. Now, we move to the second C. And I think this is the heart of my sharing. And the second C is the content. And we go directly to the topic itself. Reshaping catechetical ministry in pandemic. You know, when you define the word reshape, no, I research on this, no. It says in my research that it is a transitive verb, means to give a new form or orientation or to reorganize. But in layman's term, no, please pardon me, no, with the words that I'm using. Para bang nung nakita ko Sir Noel and Dr. Joy yung title na Reshaping, ang pumasok sa isip ko, Balik Alindog program. No? Para bang gusto mo na yung katawan mo dati ay bumalik dahil tumaba ka ngayon, di ba? Parang yun ang pumasok sa isip ko, no? The Balik Alindog program. If you want to reshape, if you want to reorganize, no, and if you want to go back to that Balik Alindog program, you need to have a discipline, tama? Parang sa aking sariling experience, no, sabi ko, parang gusto ko magpapayat, no, given the pandemic, no, kailangan kong magbalik alindog kasi dati nag-loosen na ako ng weight, no, from 200 pounds naging 175, no. Itong pandemic parang bumabalik na naman sa 200, parang gusto kong magbalik alindog, no, program, but I need to have discipline, no, para bumalik yung dati kong timbang na from 200 to 175 pounds, no. And please allow me to propose 3 disciplines to reshape, to reorganize, to have that balik alindog in our catechetical ministry in this time of the pandemic? What are these three disciplines? First, the new values. The second, the matrix of integration. And the third one is the synergy of resources. Why am I giving you these three disciplines? Because these are success stories of our diocese here in Pasig. And these are success stories of Pasig Catholic College in which I am connected. Let me now proceed to the first discipline, the new values. And I would like to borrow these new values, the 7 C's, from Bishop Mylo. No? With his permission, he said, yes, by all means, share that with them. But I just modify some given in the context of what we are talking about, reshaping catechetical ministry in pandemic. What are the 7 C's as our new values in reshaping our catechetical ministry in pandemic? The first one, C, is consultation, the first C. And in context, Pope Francis calls for a Synod of Synodality this coming 2023. But prior to the Synod of Synodality with the theme Communion, Participation, and Mission in 2023, Pope Francis wanted to have this level of consultation in the diocesan phase, then to the national phase, and then to the intercontinental phase, and then to the universal church come 2023. Kaya po mga katekista, sigurado po ay magiging involved po kayo dito, no? Kasi kalalabas lang po ng Vademecum on this pre-synod process, no? In all our dioceses all over the world. But what I'm trying to say is that if we want to reshape our catechetical ministry, we follow what Pope Francis model for this upcoming Synod 2023. The first is more of consultation, right? Because that is communication par excellence, that we listen. No? We pray for Cardinal Advincula. He was tested positive COVID yesterday, no? And but what a beautiful motto from Cardinal Advincula, right? And what is the coat of arms and motto of Cardinal? Audiam, meaning to listen. Consultation is more of the listening part. And if we want to reshape our catechetical ministry, first we need and to learn to listen. The second C, communication. Communication is not of competition. And we look at the Trinity, the three persons in one God, as our model for this communication. They don't compete with each other. The big difference between the Greek gods and our God. Number one, wala tayong tatlong Diyos. We have only one God. The Greeks have three gods, right? You have Hades, you have Poseidon, and you have Zeus. And they are brothers, right? And they compete with each other. But the God we worship, the three persons in one God, they don't compete. They communicate. And so we need to look at them as our model in terms of communication. And so if we want to reshape our catechetical ministry, I think first, after consultation, we go to communication. Third, C, coordination. You know, when we communicate 2 or 3, 4 way, or even all the way, we achieve better coordination and avoid conflicts that bring about stress in relationship and in work and in parish environment. You know, coordination uh, is more than cooperation. No? Cooperation is not, cooperation does not speaks of coordination. Because sometimes when we cooperate, it's just for compliance. I cooperate just for a requirement. I cooperate because you told me so. You impose this for me to cooperate. But you know, coordination is not just a cooperation. Coordination speaks also of initiative, that we are initiating something, that we are contributing something, right? So that's the third C. The fourth C, which actually can be our new value in this reshaping our catechetical ministry, is the capacity building. Capacity building means empowerment. In this year of Missio Agentes, we are challenged to be gifted to give. God has already empowered us with our humanity, Christian identity, education, talents, and skills. And so we need to bring that back, right? Nakakatuwa yung mga kabataan natin ngayon, in one of the sharings a while back, they have this commitment, they have this initiative of helping the church. Sabi ko nga kanina sa sharing namin, karamihan ng kabataan ngayon helping in social media, bringing sacraments, online masses to different households. No, majority of our young people there are actually no training at all in the use of technology. Doon na lang sila natuto. And I think that's capacity building. I think that is gifted to give. Kaya hindi po sayang, no, itong 500 years of Christianity in our country. Sasabihin kasi ng iba, naku, sayang naman, sana meron tayong mga activities, merong major celebrations, nagpunta na sana tayo ng Cebu, nagpunta na sana tayo sa iba't ibang provinces celebrating their centenary, the different jubilee years, no, of celebration. But I think we need to locate, we need to discover the real gifts of this celebrating 500 years in the context of capacity building as we reshape our catechetical ministry. The fifth one is creativity. When God created the world and us, He made each human being co-creator, right? And this means that we have to build from what He created. We are caregivers. We're not the owners. And being co-creators demands creativity that has something to do with initiating something, right? The young people who are listening now, no, you catechists, young catechists, and young Catholic educators, initiate something, share something, suggest, recommend something for the good of the church given the pandemic. Huwag kayong mahihiya. That's why the pandemic has pushed us to be creative and delve more into online education. Hindi na pa pwede ngayon na, ayoko nang matuto, no, kayo na lang, hindi pwedeng ganon. Especially the young people. Kailangan kayo ng simbahan ngayon. Especially you catechists. No? Mas kailangan kayo ng diocese, ng simbahan sa ngayon. Number 6, value. Number 6, connectivity. The digital milieu made us more connected than we have ever imagined. Social networks has been a great gift to us during this pandemic. In a way, digital connectivity has made us cope to being with each other when physical gatherings have been prohibited. I would like to connect that number 6 to what the new directory for catechesis mentioned in the context that I shared with you a while ago, right? That this digital technology, given that we are experiencing now because of the pandemic, are opportunities for more encounter, for more dialogue. I think we become now a borderless church. No? Magandang pag-isipan natin yon. Before, pag tayo nagka-catechist, within lang, the Diocese of Butuan, this is our territory. Diba? Pag nagtuturo tayo, this is just my students from this particular area, from this particular geographical situation. Pero ngayon, given the connectivity, given the online education, given the online catechesis, the technology, we become borderless. I think that is more becoming a Catholic, right? Because the word Catholic means embracing. Right? Not exclusive, but inclusive. Okay? Dati, I'll give you a case in point. No? Dati, pag magmimisa yung pare, di ba nagpapaalam siya eh. Magpapaalam siya dun sa parish priest kung hindi siya taga-diocese. But now, given the technology and platforms, Zoom, MS Teams, Google Meet, and whatever you call it, right? Priests can already celebrate Mass even outside the diocese. And that is now being allowed, no, by the church. Because of the pandemic, more connectivity, more opportunity for us to catechize, right? More opportunity for us to evangelize. The last value that I would like to share with you to reshape our catechetical ministry during pandemic is Catholicity. What does it mean to be inclusive? We can begin with the word Catholic. The opposite of being Catholic is not being Protestant. The opposite of Catholic is being narrow, exclusive, and overly selective in our embrace. The opposite of being Catholic is to define our faith family too narrowly. Father Ron Rolheiser, he said that Catholic means wide. Catholic means universal. It means incarnating the embrace of an abundant prodigal God whose sun shines on all indiscriminately, the bad as well as the good. Jesus once defined this by saying, "In my Father's house there are many rooms." God's heart is wide, abundance, prodigal, and universally embracing. A heart that takes care to pray for those other sheep who are not of this fold. To be Catholic is to imitate that. End of quote. What a beautiful words from Father Ron Rolheiser. That's the first discipline. Catechists and educators in faith. You want to reshape catechetical ministry, embrace that 7 C's as a new value during pandemic. Second discipline, with the Balik Alindog program. This is what I called as matrix of integration. Those teachers, catechists who are teaching in Catholic schools will be familiar with what will I say and what will I share. This matrix of integration that I started in Pasig Catholic College last year was actually an inspiration first, given that DepEd, the Department of Education, last year and even up to this year allows Catholic schools to harmonize edukasyon sa pagpapakatao and religion. I hope you're familiar with that. No? That triggers me to come up with this matrix of integration. The DepEd allows to harmonize the two learning areas of edukasyon sa pagpapakatao and Christian living education. Take note, before the pandemic, these two are separate subjects, right? But given the pandemic, online learning modality, so DepEd allows us to harmonize the two. Number 2, inspiration. Why coming up with the matrix of integration? Last June 2020, the government signed a new law. And what is that new law? That is Republic Act 11476. I repeat, Republic Act 11476. That is the new law on the good moral, right conduct, and values education. But the problem is that when the government signed this new law last year, wala pang curriculum si DepEd. Until now, DepEd has no curriculum on this new law on GMRC and values education. Pero kailangan nang gawin ngayon kasi it's a law. Kaya you will not be surprised. Ang magre-reflect ngayon sa report card, no, ng bata. CL or Christian Living or Religion / GMRC for grade school. Then Christian Living or Religion / Values Education for high school. But the curriculum that we are using is still the curriculum of edukasyon sa pagpapakatao. So these two reasons triggers me to have this matrix of integration. What is this matrix of integration? For you to understand, let me stop share this PowerPoint and share another file for you to appreciate what I'm talking about. No? Let me check first. Okay? Okay pa po ba kayo?
Okay pa po.
Okay pa po. Oo.
Okay pa po.
Oo,
Thank you.
Oo, ako pagod na
Okay
po.
pa po.
Pero,
Okay pa po kami.
Okay pa.
yeah, okay. Let me check, no? Kasi just for you to appreciate this matrix of integration. Yeah, okay. Ayan. Nakita nyo na po?
Yes.
So, sorry ha, kasi maliit. So, how do I... Yan, okay.
Yes po, nakikita na po.
Ayan. That is just an example of the matrix of integration that I am referring to. This is for senior high, for grades 11 and 12. First, we identify the minimum learning competencies of catechetical instruction. And then side by side with that catechetical instruction, we identify essential learning competencies of edukasyon sa pagpapakatao. That's how we integrate the two. And we included in the matrix campus ministry. All right? Where does campus ministry programs and activities comes in the catechetical instruction and with the edukasyon sa pagpapakatao discussion. So hindi siya hiwalay. Kasi before, nakahiwalay yan eh. During the face-to-face, you have this catechetical instruction or edukasyon sa pagpapakatao in the classroom. Then you can only experience campus ministry program when you go to the chapel for the Mass. When you go to a retreat house for a retreat. When we go to Bukal ng Tipan in Mary Hill. That's how that's how the students feel that this is a campus ministry program. But now, given the pandemic and with this matrix, the students can now experience in an online learning session a one-stop shop matrix of integration. I learn in the cognitive level, catechetical instruction and edukasyon sa pagpapakatao, and then in my heart, I celebrate whatever campus ministry programs. In this case, CLSS means Catholic Life in the Spirit Seminar. And then we also integrate in the matrix the pastoral ministry program, particularly the Pondo ng Pinoy. And then the last is the Center for Dialogue, because we have students who are non-Catholic and non-Christian. And so we have a separate program for them. And this is a dialogue in action, a dialogue with these non-Catholic and non-Christian students. So that is just an example of that matrix. No? Let me stop share. No? And I'll just go back to my presentation. Okay. So that's how I explain this matrix of integration. These are seamless sequence of programs, compact with impact, because we just choose among the activities and programs and essential learning competencies from each area, and well coordinated and collaboration needed. That's how we frame this. Now this year we're not using any book, because we translated this matrix of integration into a module. So nakatipid na si parent, and then nakatulong pa kay catechist, kay religion teacher, yung module from the matrix of integration. I do not know if you are familiar with the statement, religion as core of the curriculum. That statement was coined by the Monsignor Gerardo O. Santos, the former chair of the Catechetical Foundation of the Archdiocese of Manila. He was the one who developed that, religion as core of the curriculum. This is just one side of that statement, this matrix of integration. And so in a nutshell, it's already 11:14:5. No? In a nutshell, catechetical curriculum is concerned not with what students will do as Christians in the learning situation, but what they will learn as a consequence of what they do as Christians. So that matrix of integration is not just an output-based evidence learning. That's before the pandemic. The matrix of integration is a process of learning of our students, of the one whom we catechized. Let me now proceed to the last discipline of reshaping catechetical curriculum, and that is what I call the synergy of resources. You know, before the pandemic, those who are teaching in Catholic schools, you will understand this. Before the pandemic, the guidance office, the guidance counselors, has no business at all to IT departments. Right? Yung mga guidance counselors, they don't communicate with the IT departments before the pandemic. But now, here in PCC, in my own observation, the guidance counselors now are regularly communicating with our IT people. Why? Because they need to use technology to communicate with our students and parents, given the platforms that they are using for counseling and for spiritual facilitation for our campus ministry. Right? And I think that's a synergy of resources. And I think that's a concrete example of reshaping, of rethinking, of the way we think before the pandemic and now during the pandemic. And what is this synergy of resources given that example? I think we need to connect with diocesan level, with parish level, as well as in the parish parochial schools level. That before the pandemic, we can easily say, I can monopolize catechizing, I can monopolize evangelizing. This is my territory, this is my world. Walang pakialaman, dyan kayo. But now, I think the name of the game is for us to synergize. Use the 7 C's as new values in this synergy of resources. What you are seeing right now are examples from our diocese. We synergize our resources. We have this monthly, we call this K-Heart, Pusuan si Cristo, online formation series. We connect with the diocese, we connect with parochial schools, with catechists. The catechists, they continue with their online catechesis, with sharing stories of saints. They call it karupukan at kabanalan. Connecting with the diocesan social communication ministry. That's how I explain synergy of resources. And when we enter into synergy of resources, we have this new network of pedagogy, new network of learning. And what is this? What is this network pedagogy? To reshape catechetical curriculum, knowing the next generation's context and characteristics. Second, understanding that catechesis as education. Third, developing new attitude and posture of a catechist. I want to borrow Pope Francis. Pope Francis says, pedagogy of rehabilitation. And I quote from his message from the Global Compact on Education. He said, amid the present health crisis and the poverty of confusion it has caused, we believe that it is time to subscribe to a global pact on education for and with future generations. That is network pedagogy, the pedagogy of rehabilitation of Pope Francis. So these are the three content that I would like to impart with you as you reshape your catechetical ministry in the pandemic. Embrace the 7 C's as a new values. Second, try to explore of this matrix of integration. And the third one, the synergy of resources. I now come to the last C. What are the challenges ahead of us given the 3 disciplines? The first is on the new values, the issue of consistency. What if tapos na ang pandemic? Are we still embracing the new values? On matrix of integration, the issue of implementation. How do we implement this? If you embrace and use this matrix of integration, dear religious or educators in faith and catechists, this should be well collaborated and coordinated with the other stakeholders of the school or of the diocese or of the institution. This is not just a one work of catechists and educators in faith. When you combine all of these ministries into one matrix of integration, it should be what? Collaborative. And the issue of it should be owned by each one. So as they implement it, they will own it. Hindi lang basta for compliance, as I said. And the third challenge is on the synergy of resources. The issue of sustainability. How do we sustain this synergy of resources? I think this is connected with what Father, again, Ron Rolheiser tells us. Still a challenge. And I quote, as a church, giving witness to Christ today requires that we build communities that are wide enough to hold our differences. What we need is not a new technique, but a new sanctity. We don't need some updating of the gospel to make it more acceptable to the world. We need a more courageous radiating of its wide compassion. We also don't need some new secret that catches people's curiosity, but a way of following Christ that can hold more of the tensions of our world in proper balance so that everyone, irrespective of temperament and ideology, will find themselves better understood and embraced by what we hold most dear. End of quote. As I said yesterday, Pope Francis met with a handful of catechists. And I would like to borrow some of his words, still connected with this Antiquum Ministerium, as a challenge, again, for all of us. This is why I instituted the Ministry of Catechists. They are preparing the right for the, I quote, creation of catechists, so that the Christian community may feel the need to awaken this vocation and to experience the service of some men and women who, living the celebration of the Eucharist, may feel more vividly the passion to transmit the faith as evangelizers. End of quote. If you connect these words to the words of Father Ron Rolheiser, we go back to the very definition of evangelization, connected to catechesis. New fervor, the need to have new expression, new ardor, and embracing the new culture of the digital world. Let me give 2 questions for reflection as I end my sharing. The first question is, as a catechist and educator, in what way do you see working with other ministries in catechizing during pandemic? And the second question, as Christian Catholic, how does catechesis in digital age create more possibilities of encounter? And as I end, just to add, given these 2 questions, no, I think we need also to develop the topic, right? Reshaping. It just enter into my mind only now. Can I stop share? Kasi ngayon lang pumasok to eh. It's not part of my presentation. Naisip ko lang ngayon, what's the difference between reshaping and paradigm shifting? We can add that in our reflection. We can even add this to the question and in our reflection, giving the topic reshaping or the difference of reshaping and paradigm shifting. How do we live with COVID as catechists and as educators in faith? What are the non-negotiables and negotiables as we live in COVID, in catechizing and teaching the faith? Nakita ko yung inyong title, no? Tama ba ito? Saud sang katekista sa tiempo sang pandemya, no? Para bang yung ng tiempo, no? The dance. We need to dance with COVID. Parang yun nga, how do we live with COVID? And we need to learn how to live with COVID. And we need to unleash what are the non-negotiables and negotiables. Additional reflection, sorry, ngayon lang pumapasok to, naisulat ko, that are we bringing classroom in the home as we teach catechesis, as we teach religion? Are we bringing Christ in the home? And I think we need to think also that from teaching, from catechizing, from evangelizing, to forming and transforming. Because in teaching, we also include parents.